Alright guys, I'm coming back with my second Hydro video today, and this is going to focus on resistance tanks for the head of Mischief and also provoke champions. Obviously the provoke champions for the head of Decay, but we're going to see if there's some overlap because there's a couple champions that can do other jobs for us. So first I'll just hop in here with, I think this is my usual hard team. Alright, so we're just gonna manual a little bit of this this Hydra here. Oboro is gonna be our resistance tank. I believe she has 420 resistance to be able to resist Mischief on hard. Alright, so I do just like to open with A1s on most of the guys. When I first start, if you unload with a whole bunch of debuffs, the head of Decay will just strip them right off. So now you can see my Walking Tomb Drang has 3 buffs because of Raka's passive. She gave him the continuous heal, and everybody else has the same 2 buffs. So we have a Boro who has this A3 that gives herself 3 buffs: increase crit rate, crit damage, and a perfect veil for 2 turns. So now you can see Oboro over here is stacked up with these debuffs. So when the head of Mischief goes to steal with Thieving Jaws, it's going to attack the Oboro and get resisted. So this is a terrible example of a run. Everything's getting resisted by this poison cloud here, but you did just see that the head of Mischief went to take the buffs from Oboro, and it failed. And there is no cooldown on the head of Mischief, so you do really need to have a designated tank. So as you can see, the Oboro dies, and then the head of Mischief goes and takes the buffs from the Walking Tomb Drang. So again, this is not a good example of a good run. I'm just trying to show you the Oboro. Yeah, we don't have a provoke champion in here, so we're not stopping the head of Decay from just cleansing the whole team. See if we can get one more shot on the Aboro so we can see that one more time. So I think here it goes. So nope. Head of Wrath with a big smack. And then there it goes. Goes to grab it, gets resisted. I'll show you guys another example of a resistance tank here. So my Aboro from that first run has 450 resistance, which is enough for hard Hydra. I do believe you need a little bit more to do brutal Hydra. So now I'm going to show you this a little bit more advanced resistance tank using Inquisitor Shamael. Inquisitor Shamael is not a good resistance tank, but he is amazing against the Head of Torment. So if we can also make him kind of a knockoff resistance tank while also using him to counter Head of Torment, it frees us up another slot to bring in a damage dealer or another healer. I'm currently uploading another video to YouTube, so it's making my game really slow. So let's go to manual here for a little bit. I guess we'll just throw everything at him, even though she's just gonna get cleansed anyway. Alright. Alright, so the block debuffs shouldn't get spread because of the block buffs that are up. It does take a little while for the Inquisitor Shamael to get going with this type of build. He's also built very slowly. Okay, so this is his first turn so far. So on Inquisitor Shamael, on his passive, you have, the counter to the fear in the turn meter increase. But the rest of his kit can also be used to make him into a resistance tank. Is this the one? So his A1, he will counterattack every time an enemy places a debuff on an ally. So we haven't received any debuffs yet because we have the block buffs from Cardiel. But we will eventually get debuffs, and if the Head of Blight or somebody puts a lot of poisons on us, say they put 2 poisons on everybody, Inquisitor Shamael will counterattack 10 times. So in order to make him into a resistance tank, you put a Blood Shield ring accessory on him, which comes from the clan versus clan tournaments, and it has a 15% chance to give you a small shield every time you attack an enemy. So I think it's a 10 or 15% chance to put a shield on you. It's not that high. because he's counterattacking so often with his A1, you get this little shield. It's not a significant shield. It's nothing that's going to protect you, but it does give you one extra buff. So you should always have one more buff than everybody else on your team after you start getting going and your team starts taking debuffs and he's counterattacking with his A1. So then his A2 gives you a 3 hit. So it should, we already have the shield. We're going to lose it when we attack, and we should gain it back. And see, we got the shield back for the 3 hits. So now he's just always going to maintain one extra debuff compared to everybody else on the team. It's not as safe a strategy as using somebody like an Oboro who has those 3 self buffs, which just gives her a lot of security in making her the resistance tank. But again, here with Inquisitor Shramil, we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone and also counterattacking or countering the Head of Torment. So because the Head of Torment isn't in the starting lineup, I would not actually use an Inquisitor Shramil in normal or hard. So as you can see, this is the starting lineup for this rotation. We do not have to deal with Torment, and then we also don't have to deal with, which one's that, Decay? Suffering, and we also don't have to deal with Suffering. So Suffering brings you the Ally Protect. Depending on the difficulty of Hydra that you're facing, it affects how often the non-starting heads appear. In normal, you're hardly ever going to see these 2 heads. As you go up in difficulty to hard, then you'll start seeing these a little bit more, and once you get to brutal or to nightmare, you're going to be seeing these heads. Every time one of these heads dies, one of these is going to pop in there and take its place. So the higher up in difficulty the Hydra you go, the more well-rounded your team does have to be. You could also bring in a Provoke champion that also could be your resistance tank. Again, sorry, my game's going really slow. I'm uploading some videos to YouTube at the moment. A really great option for Provoke champion and a resistance tank would be Bivault of the Thorn. So he has a Strengthen that only he gets, and then he has Provoke on his A1 and his A2. So all you would need to do is build him with high resistance, 415 for hard, and you don't want your resistance tanks to be too fast, or else they'll outspeed everybody else and they'll lose their buffs. So you actually want them to be the slowest ones on your team, but not too slow where you cripple them. Like 185 is pretty slow for my account, but it's still fast enough to cycle through all of its abilities. The one that I use on my lower level account, let's see here, is Vargal, the lizard. Vargal has a similar ability to the Bivault, where he gives himself a Strengthen and nobody else, and then he also has a Provoke. So that Provoke can help you lock down Decay, while also being a resistance tank to help you lock down Head of Mischief. Something to be wary about when you're using just a 1 debuff res tank, or if you want to use them as not a res tank, rather something like a Vargal or a Bivault. If you only wanted to use them to be a provoker and you wanted to use somebody else to be your